Will Clarence and Virginia Thomas succeed in killing President Obama's health care plan?
Well, I think it's a tough call at this point. I think it's a virtual certainty that the case will go to the Supreme Court this fall, and we'll have a decision sometime in the spring of 2012. I think there are four sure votes to uphold the law, the four Democrats, Ginsburg, Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan. The question is, can they get a fifth? They're certainly not going to get it from Thomas, and Thomas is the surest vote on the other side. I mean, obviously, the most likely candidate to vote with the liberals is Anthony Kennedy, and there are aspects of his history that would suggest he has a traditional view of the scope of federal power. But, the world is changing, and the Republican Party is changing, and the conservatives on the Supreme Court, just as the conservatives in Congress, are more conservative than they used to be. Yeah. And so I think anyone who predicts with certainty is really blowing smoke.
Well, and Lewis Powell, of all people, I'm forgetting the decision. It was some research I was doing the weekend before last for a book. Back in the 70s or 80s, wrote in one of his opinions about how ever since Marbury, ever since the judicial review was established, that in the early years the court used it very little, very rarely, and there have been times when the court used it rather aggressively. But that should the court use basically overturn legislation done by Congress and the president for what is perceived as political purposes, that there could be a significant blowback, and he specifically mentioned 1937, in which case Justice Roberts famously, the then Roberts, started changing his tune because after Roosevelt's unsuccessful court packing scheme, Roberts was basically humiliated by the public, and then within the next few years, most of the conservatives just basically retired from the court. They were all pretty old by then anyway. But, is it possible that public opinion could have influenced this?
I think the real lesson of the crisis of the 1930s at the Supreme Court, where the court, dominated by conservatives, struck down a lot of New Deal legislation, the real lesson is who wins presidential elections controls the Supreme Court. And, the question of who wins in 2012 is really enormously important as far as the court goes. And I think, it's obviously, I don't think there's going to be any change in the membership of the court between now and the next election. But, we've had a fairly even number of Democrats and Republicans over the past 20 years, and that's reflected in the very even split on the Supreme Court. But it is also significant that the Republican appointees, particularly Roberts and Alito, are more conservative than the Republican appointees they replaced, Rehnquist and O'Connor. And I think that reflects where the Republican Party has been moving in recent years, and presumably will continue to move over the next decade.
Well, and that was the point I was going to make, is that, first of all, you say he who is president or she, determines the Supreme Court. I'm assuming by more than just appointment. It actually, it took Roosevelt basically 4 or 5 years to beat this into these guys' heads.
Right. What a lot of people forget about Roosevelt is, he ultimately had 8 appointments to the court. But
right.
In his first term, from 1933 to 1937, he had 0.
Right. And they were frustrating his efforts like crazy, particularly in 35 and 36. So, to bring this to this day, in 2000, arguably it wasn't the president that influenced the court. It was the other way around. The court brought us a new president in Bush v. Gore.
Well,
and Sandra Day O'Connor was wretched about that. After she left the court.
The one of the great unanswered questions about the Supreme Court in recent history is whether Sandra Day O'Connor regrets that vote. She is not the kind of person who speaks of regret much. She's someone who always looks forward. But, O'Connor grew very alienated by the Bush administration. Right. And if you see her post-Supreme Court career since 2005, you see that she has essentially embraced a lot of progressive causes, but I think everybody remembers the result in Bush v. Gore, and that led to 8 years of a very conservative president.
Right, right, and she might have in a case like this, in a case like the healthcare case. I mean, she was as conservative as she was. She was a moderate compared to Roberts and Alito and Scalia and Thomas.
Very true. And I think one of the things that's very important to recognize about the healthcare case is that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this wouldn't even have been a question. I mean, right. the Commerce Clause as a basis for federal jurisdiction has essentially been a blank check since the 1940s.
Well, and Bobby Kennedy used it aggressively against people like George Wallace and
absolutely, and the idea that a regulation that affected the national economy, as God knows healthcare certainly does, that could be unconstitutional as a violation of the Commerce Clause just is completely implausible. In fact, the most controversial aspect, the individual mandate, essentially forcing people to buy insurance. Conservative foundations were pushing that in the 90s.
Right.
Not only did they think it was constitutional, they thought it was a good idea.
Richard Nixon proposed it in 72?
Sometime in
73, whatever it was.
And I'm forgetting whether it's Heritage or American Enterprise Institute, but one of them had a very prominent plan to establish an individual mandate. So the idea that it is unconstitutional just illustrates how the legal economy, the legal thinking has moved to the right.
But this court has just gone nuts. I mean, we thought campaign contribution limits were stare decisis. I mean, in 1907, the Tillman Act, for example, it's been changed and warped and woofed over the years, but still. And then they come along with Citizens United. A very quick question. We have just a minute left. Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution says the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction both as law and fact with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. Is there any possibility that the Congress might start regulating the Supreme Court?
There's been talk about that over the years. I mean, for better or worse, and I think it's probably for better. The Congress doesn't mess with the Supreme Court. Arlen Specter used to talk about forcing the court to televise its arguments, and even that was considered, too much of an interference. I don't see any chance, realistically, of a limit on the Supreme Court's jurisdiction.
So we end up with 9 kings, basically, who decide all our laws.
Exactly.
I don't think that's democracy.
Well, that's judicial review.
That it is. I have some problems, Marbury versus Madison, but that's a whole other conversation.